The next question.
Well, Minister, I suppose when this government started in 2011, we did in fact have a second budget that year, a mini budget. In 2009, I think we had a kind of a major budget to address the deficiencies in 2008 budget. So it probably is inevitable if this is a general election year that we will have a second budget. But certainly after the revisions, rescheduling, and so on and so forth, that we discussed in the House last week, isn't it likely that even whatever happens on Brexit, you're going to have to go back if you're still in office and come forward with another budget? Thanks, Ken.
Thank you. My department's budget of 2019 forecasts as the central scenario the assumption that the UK will make an orderly exit. This will involve a transition period being agreed that extends or replicates existing frameworks until the end of next year. In other words, the UK is assumed to remain in the single market and customs union during this period. From 2021 onwards, the baseline forecasts assume the UK and EU will conclude some form of a trade agreement. Clearly, the impact of Brexit upon the economy and the public finances remains highly uncertain. The timing and nature of the UK's exit remains unclear. As more information becomes available, my department will update and publish its assessment in the Stability Programme update, which will be submitted to the Commission in April. Additional information will be available at the time of Budget 2020, which will be introduced in October of this year, and this will enable the Government to design the appropriate budgetary policy response. And finally, as I said before, there will not be an additional budget for this year. The appropriate policy response to a disorderly Brexit in the short term is to allow the automatic stabilisers to provide a counter-cyclical support for our economy.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Broughan.
Well, yesterday at the Budgetary Oversight Committee, Minister, we had Michael Cassidy, the Chief Statistician of the Central Bank, and he expressed, I think, surprise that in Budget 2019 you didn't actually budget for a significant surplus as a cushion, knowing that we were heading into some kind of a Brexit, and perhaps, hopefully not, but even still a cliff-edge Brexit. And I notice we've just, those of us who are interested in finance, I think, we just had a chance, I think, to have a quick look at the European semester report, and obviously it does acknowledge that the economy continues to strengthen, but it does note, I think, that the improvements in the budget balance are stalling, and most of all, of course, we've had a continual history of under-forecasting, particularly in relation to the disastrous management of the National Children's Hospital, and given these facts, these issues coming together, is it something? Is your department and I was referring to the fact recently, I mean, I've been reading your management committee notes and so on, or in relation to risk factors. So are you very carefully managing expected expenditures or unknown expenditures
Deputy
this year?
Burton has a supplementary here.
Could you indicate if you have costed or done an estimate of what the cost will be and the impact on cash flows will be of the announcement you made about the new proposed treatment in respect of VAT on imports and how that will be accounted for? What are your expected cash flow implications, for how long, and what do you expect the cost of that measure to be?
Thank you. So in relation to the different questions that have been put to me there, to repeat what I said there to Deputy Broughan, I'm only planning for there to be one budget for this year, and that will be the budget that will be delivered in October of this year. In relation to what your comments there in surplus, we actually did end up moving to a very slight surplus last year of 0.1%, but as I acknowledged at the time, that surplus was driven by corporation tax figures in November and December coming in even higher than expected. And in the two budgets that I've been responsible for, I've never yet had any deputy in this House call on me to run a higher surplus. Has not happened yet. And if you are deputy, and if you are calling Deputy Boyd Barrett, and you know I often do compliment you on the detail of the proposals that you put forward, while also arguing they'd be disastrous. I do both. I don't recollect those policies yielding a surplus, and I find it very unlikely, Deputy, that if you did ever hold the job of Minister for Finance, that you would be the person making the case for sustained surpluses within our economy. I'm sure you'd be looking to spend it immediately.
There's a challenge
and
for you,
then
Deputy.
in relation to Deputy Burton and the question that she put to me, in terms of the cost for this year for the move that we have made in relation to deferred accounting, we don't have a figure as to what would be the cost for this year, for the simple reason that in the event of a disorderly Brexit taking place, that is clearly going to create economic costs and difficulties, which we've tried to quantify, and it is difficult for me to be able to say what exactly would be the mitigating effect of this move. The effect for this year is more likely to be a cash flow effect rather than a cost effect.
Deputy Broughan.
There are still so many ominous reports on the possibilities of a no-deal Brexit or something that incorporates elements of a no-deal Brexit. I know that Commissioner Oettinger has told us, I think, just a week or two ago, that the no-deal would produce a general recession in this country. That would be very, incredibly serious, obviously, for our indigenous industry, for the agri-food business, and so on. And we have the Governor of the Bank of England saying, I think, he expects something like a cliff edge drop in growth, maybe 9–10%, a major heading into major depression type territory. So I'm just wondering, I mean, again, what preparations, if any, has your department made to have some sort of a cushion for these circumstances? And I agree with my colleague here. I think every year you've got budgets from the left, and the one characteristic that they've all had, I think, is they've all been well balanced. We've balanced. We've been prepared to come up with new taxes and actually balance them. But the key point is, Minister, obviously your department needs to be very ready.
There is a difference between a budget being balanced and a budget moving into surplus. And I'm quite happy to look at the different proposals or alternative budgets you've put through to me. But I don't recollect you or indeed Deputy Boyd Barrett ever saying we should raise money that we shouldn't spend. Now, Deputy Boyd Barrett, I stand to be corrected by you then, and I'm sure you will correct me if you are moving to a hawkish position on the national finances of the country. And in relation... Well, your surplus credentials are already weakening, Deputy Broughan, if that's your view there. And I've outlined on a number of occasions all of the different things we've tried to deal with a no-Brexit scenario. And some earlier questions I've outlined where we are from a staff point of view for the Revenue Commissioner, from an infrastructure point of view, the work that we are doing there. My department then a number of weeks ago published the forecast that we have regarding what would happen to our economy in the event of a disorderly Brexit, which points to an immediate and sudden change in our growth potential for 2019 and 2020.